Hi, 1302 students. Professor Smith here, Mr. Smith, Kyle, whatever you want to call me. I wanted to reach out to you today and just break down a couple of ways you can approach this compare contrast essay, this final essay that we will write for class. So, when you're comparing and contrasting, you're looking at how two things are alike and how they're different. And there are two ways to approach this. Well, there's more than two ways. We're going to look at two ways today. One's called the block method, if you look here at your screen. And the other, and I think a little more sophisticated way to do this is the point-by-point method. Let's look at the block method first, which would include 4 paragraphs total. Your introduction, that's going to include your hook, background information, spell, and thesis statement, obviously. Now for this, since we're writing about stories, we're writing about literature, your hook, I think an excellent way to open this would be a quote, a relevant quote from one of the stories. An excellent quote makes a pretty engaging hook. And these are excellent stories, so you have your pick of the litter here. You don't have to open with a quote, obviously, but that is one effective way of doing this. So your background would include a bit about the authors. You have Sherman Alexie, Lucia Berlin, and ZZ Packer. I try to make this as diverse as possible in 5 weeks. So 3 incredibly varied authors of incredible talent. You might include a little bit about them or what happens in these stories, or maybe both those things. Anything to ground the reader in all the information they'll need to make sense of this essay. And then, of course, your thesis statement, which will focus on how these two stories are alike and how they're different according to one of the elements that you've chosen. It could be theme, characterization, plot, whatever that element is, you need to write about how these two stories are alike and how they're different and pare that all down into your thesis statement. So after your intro in the block method comes paragraph or body paragraph 1, which would be focus on the similarities of characterization or plot or theme, whatever it is, whatever element you're writing about, you devote this entire first body paragraph to how these two stories are alike. You could write about struggle, something to do with struggle. Struggle isn't a theme. Theme is usually one sentence. Struggle is worth it. You could say it would be a theme to what you pawn, I will redeem, and brownies as well, right? You can make that theme work for both stories. So this whole first body paragraph would be about how these two stories have a similar theme in that regard. And then your next body paragraph would, of course, you guessed it, focus on differences. And again, theme, plot, characterization, whatever element you're focused on, how these two stories are different. And then, of course, your conclusion, which would include a restated thesis statement, not verbatim, not word for word, but, reword it, and a breakdown of summary of what these two body paragraphs are about. And then, of course, your final think statement. Go big or go home for that think statement, right? Your conclusion is just as important as your introduction. Excuse me. So that's your block method. Now let's look at the point-by-point method, which I think is a little more sophisticated, a little more in-depth, requires a little bit more critical thinking on your part, but it will pay off. This has 3 body paragraphs as opposed to only 2. Of course, your intro would be very similar to what the block method is, and then you'd have body paragraph 1, and that's going to focus on one point, and it will contain similarities and differences. And then same thing for your next 2 body paragraphs, except obviously this is body paragraph 2 and body paragraph 3. So each of these body paragraphs contains information about similarities and differences according to one point. So this one point, what is that, you ask? Well, if you're writing about, let's say you're writing about characterization, you're writing about the characters in these stories, specifically the main character, or the protagonist, the narrator, since these are all first-person narrators. You need to break that down into 3 points. Well, these stories are alike and dissimilar in that the characters are outsiders. So who they are, the way they talk could be a point, right? That could be dialogue. You could focus one whole paragraph on dialogue. Another point about characterization might be their attitudes, the way their attitude is similar and the way their attitudes are not alike. That could comprise a point about characterization and how those two things are alike and how they're different in one paragraph. And then, of course, you have your conclusion. So again, with this approach, you're going to have to break down your element into 3 separate points. So if you're writing about characterization, think about 3 ways these characters and the 2 stories, whichever 2 you choose, are alike and how they're different. Or theme, how the themes are alike and different. 3 points about theme, 3 points about plot, 3 points about characterization. Whatever it is that you choose, you have to break it down according to 3 points and then write about how they're alike and dissimilar in each of those 3 body paragraphs. Then you conclude it the same way you would in the block method. So the only differences here are the body paragraphs, right? You have this very simple approach in the block method and a little more nuanced and sophisticated approach in the point by point. So the only difference here is it requires, aside from one more paragraph, is for you to break it down even further. You're still writing about one element, right? But you're thinking about points within that element. So that's it. I wanted to just run this by you, show it to you, and give you a sense of what I look like since you haven't seen me all semester. And remember, if you have any questions, concerns, feel free to email me, reach out to me, or we can set up a Zoom office hour, whatever works for you. Thanks for watching, and I really do look forward to seeing what you guys come up with for this essay. Remember, don't be obvious. Don't write the first thing that swims by in your mind. Dig a little deeper. Have some original thoughts about these very original stories. All right, thank you, and have a great fall semester. Hopefully you're still with us then. Take care.